Hi, welcome everyone. This is Varleigh with you at Lavender Sky Panther. Today is Saturday, March 14th, 2026, and today's topic or the title of little today's show is called Blue Willow and Atomic Redwood. And forgive me if I'm a little out of sorts. I took on a really huge, massive project outside, so I've got like pollen, dust, my eyes are kind of wild, my face is kind of puffy, but if I kind of look wild, I just came out of that. But anyway, it kind of suits the theme because we will be talking about redwoods, the great redwood trees of California and elsewhere. And let's just also see whatever wants to come up. So, welcome if you're new or returning, equally so. Heartfelt thanks for being here. And hopefully the live chat works if you feel like dropping in. If not, no big deal. And I do have a kind of a setup. I've got my typical little printed out slides. But if anybody wants to bring up even an unrelated topic, feel free, and it may be worthwhile to talk about it. Welcome, Rita. Hi there. Thanks for being here. So I'm going to do like always, just kind of mark the show with the title sheet here. So the title page, and I've got to say, a lot of these topics that come up. Let me back up a step if anybody isn't familiar with my process here, why I'm even doing these things. I just was kind of guided to talk about a variety of topics, and usually I'll just go and meditate, or I might have been like out in the yard raking and raking leaves, and then like a topic comes to me, or doing dishes in the kitchen, and just something kind of comes in or falls in place and says, okay, this is going to be the topic. And usually I just kind of, like they say, marinate on that a bit before I announce the title, because sometimes it'll flip on me from one day to the next. I'll be like, no, we're not going to do that one, we're going to do this one now. So I did kind of let it try to gel a bit. And I thought, well, this is a rather strange collection of things I'll be talking about. But hey, I don't question it. I just come out with it. So we'll see. And as always, the point is just have a fun conversation. Also, just touch on some things, maybe some food for thought items in here, or you hear just one word or a color, or as I'm talking or you're watching the chat, something triggers in you of something that you want to do, use as a springboard to look into further. That's all this is about. Mainly just to have some fun. It's Saturday. Let's have some fun. Okay. So let me get back to why this collection of things started coming up. So the whole crux of the title is I started thinking of what is the very largest, in this case, tallest or longest animal in the world that we know of, or reportedly the longest or tallest. What is the tallest plant or tree, let's say? And then what is the smallest plant, meaning tree, sorry. I went tree and, okay, let me back up a minute. Like I said, I'm a little disoriented. I don't know why, but we'll focus. So I went with what's the most massive, tallest or longest animal? And what is the tallest tree? And then I went, what is the tiniest tree and the tiniest animal, at least what we can access that we're told, what is what. There might be in reality something bigger or smaller, but we're just going what we have access to on the internet is tallest and smallest, basically. So looking around, the biggest reported is the blue whale. And we'll get into some stats and all of that. Also, we'll look at like book things that we're told, and we'll also go intuitively on this too. So the blue whale is the most massive, and then the tallest tree is reported to be the coast redwood. Then we also have the tiniest. So the tiniest tree, I had never thought of it until this idea popped up to do the show, is the dwarf willow found in the Arctic. Okay. And then the tiniest animal, I know it's hard to see, I have a better picture coming up, is down here in the lower part by the redwood tree, is an ant. So it's called the Carabara atoma. So atoma meaning like atom, right? So then, since I was looking at blue whales and willows, of course, the idea floated through blue willow, and that is a very ubiquitous, I always say that wrong, ubiquitous China pattern, transfer China pattern used everywhere. If you look up the history of it, and it's called blue willow, and there's a willow tree and it's got a blue and white pattern, and I'll get into that. I have an example to hold up as well. So anyway, we're going big and small and big, and from there, of course, there's going to be some other interesting topics that float in that aren't related to those animal and tree things I just mentioned. So looking at some facts, though, I'll just pull this up for a second. Here's a little chart of where we're headed. So The tallest redwood is named supposedly the Hyperion. And I say, I alluded to this in my post, one of my posts. Here we go again. If you've watched any of my other lives, we've got this ongoing saga of the Greeks and the Titans, the epic battle. But here we have another Greek name of a Titan, Hyperion. Okay, so this is just a visual at a glance reference of how much bigger it's supposed to be than the Statue of Liberty and the Big Ben. So we'll get to that one. So I'll just go through my little list here because I'll also talk about the little stats for the whale and the willow and the ant. Okay, so the tallest redwood is named Hyperion, supposedly 380 feet tall, thereabouts. Then we have the blue whale at 110 feet long, is supposedly the longest recorded one, being a female back in the early 1900s. Not sure if that's true, but that's what we're given. And 200 tons in weight, which is also 418,000 pounds. Then we have the dwarf willow for the shortest tree. It's about 0.4 to 2.4 inches tall. Now, I did not do my research, but this is fun work instead of homework for any of you that are interested. Maybe take a look at what classifies that as a tree. When it's that tiny, like that could be a weed. So what makes it a tree? I'm not going to cover that this time around, but feel free if anyone wants to drop it in the chat or just look on your own time. Then we have that, like I said, the Cerbera atoma. That's the smallest ant at 0.03 to 0.04 inches long. So that's like tinier than your little sugar ant. I am based in the United States, so I'm going to mostly give some United States references. So if you notice those little tiny brown ants in the kitchen that love the sugar, this ant is even tinier than that. Okay. Now Hyperion, I'll just cover one little thing. I'm not going to go deep into the Titan and Olympian story again. The Titanomachy or the Gigantomachy. There's just so many battles that went on in that Greek mythology. But Hyperion was supposedly the Titan god of heavenly light, one of the sons of Uranus, meaning heaven, and Gaia, meaning earth, and the father of the lights of heaven, Eos, the dawn, Helios, the sun, and Selene, the moon. They say his wife was Taela, I think, lady of the ether, the shining blue of the sky. So Hyperion's name means supposedly watcher from above, or he who goes above, and from the Greek words hyper and yon. Okay, so that comes from an excerpt, and I'll put all my references down in the description area below, so at a time after the show airs. So anyway, that's what we're looking at. We'll kick it off with the tree. So here's just a little more backup of, sorry about that, referencing the tallest tree in the world. Now, what's weird about this, and for any of you not familiar with the redwood, it lives up to its name, has this beautiful red bark. It's very, very thick, so it's very excellent for fire resistance and pest resistance, quote unquote pest, meaning insect resistance. And they're found mostly, up through California and in the Northwest Pacific. They're found in actually some unusual places. Redwoods are also found in New Zealand and over in Europe. I know there's like one at least behind one of the castles in Scotland. Can't remember the name of it though right now. I think it's Glamis, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, that's another thing to look up too. I think there was one found buried in China, and so anyway, that's a little more fun work if you want to take a look around to see where they are. But they are really truly worthwhile seeing if you have a chance, to go visit some. Some of you, I'm sure, already have. But there is something very unique about them and the energy that they give off and how they interrelate with each other. So I'm going to hold up another photo. These are just taken off the internet. I have some of my own, but I couldn't get to them, so I just took these off the internet. But here we have some people walking along a fallen redwood, and then, some have, carved out little passageways, through fallen ones, just to give you the idea of the size of some of them. And there's also some up in the Northwest, I think Pacific, where you can, technically it's Northern California, but you can drive a car through it. And I have done that, and I've been up through some of the Redwood National Forest areas, back a long time ago. But they're very impressive, and in some cases too, they talk about, I think this is in Calumet, if that's how you say it. Again, up in Northern California, they have these like big, larger than life, like plaster statues of Paul Bunyan and his ox Babe. And that's a whole nother story too about Paul Bunyan being a giant and his giant ox, the Babe. Now they say this is like lore based on loggers and just kind of fantasy that there was a really tall logger, and then reality he was like 6 foot something. But I think there's more to it because we have, the Avenue of the Giants is the name of one of the stretches where they just have these really giant sequoia and redwood trees. And then you have this giant Paul Bunyan. And I think, there might be a lot to it, a little more than just tongue in cheek. Oh, these are, you just call it a giant. Hang on, I'm looking for a prop here. Oh, here. I often reference this book, The Smoky God or A Voyage to the Inner World. And in this one, a little bit of a spoiler alert, there's a son, a boy and his dad make it to the inner earth. And it's a whole account of how they're giants and they're giant trees. And I think that, there's a particle of truth in everything. If we're going to the tongue in cheek of the title of the show, Atomic Redwood, atomic isn't a bomb. It's referencing an atom or something of, or relating to an atom or, particle size. So I think there's a particle of truth in everything. And I think there is. So if you want to check out this book, it's less than 60 pages. I highly recommend it. Whether you think it's a true story or creative story, there's a lot of specific detail in there that just my little truth detector goes, I think that really happened. Anyway, I do cover that on a previous live show too, so I'm not going to go through that all again. But getting back to this, I want to bring up this picture because now if we're going to talk about redwoods and the redwood forests, and again, I invite you to go looking around on the Earth, planet, Turing map or whatever, again, whatever we're told, but go on like, I don't want to give the name of the people the credit, but you know what I mean? Go on the internet, zoom around, look at the Earth, look at the foliage, look at California, zoom in and just see if there are any areas that intrigue you or, that you want to look up further on your own. This is just a springboard to see what you might want to look into further. But what I want to bring up about this is a personal experience that I had in the redwood forest. So again, I think it was north of Eureka. I have to look and see the exact name of the forest. It's slipping my mind right now. But much like this man, this could be an exact picture of mine. This is how I remember it. Imagine me being that man walking on there, and I had a family member who was like ducked down underneath somewhere. And I had an experience now. I'm not sure if it was Sasquatch related or UFO related or somehow interconnected. But a phenomenon happened, definitely, absolutely a supernatural phenomenon. I was about 16, and I was doing that, walking along like a balance beam on the tree, the fallen redwood, giant redwood. And all of a sudden, you have forest noises, you have little chipmunk chatter or squirrels or whatever, birds, you hear stuff, and it went totally silent. But not only totally silent, but it almost was like a negative pressure, like I felt something like sucking out even my breath, out of my lungs. And everything went eerily quiet, like dead quiet. When you say dead quiet, I mean, there was nothing, not even a little breeze, nothing. And again, it was like negative pressure. And at that same time, my sibling and I were like just, playing around. I heard, parents off in the distance calling our names to come, but like come right away. Like they were very serious about it. And I thought that was kind of odd because I thought we had a lot of time there. And now that I look back, I think that I was kind of in some kind of portal forming because their voices seemed a little much farther away than they should have been, looking at, real relative time and distance of where they were. So looking back, there was definitely some kind of phenomenon. Now, when dealing with Sasquatch, because I haven't had an encounter with that somewhere else in North Carolina, and I have actually told my full story and my full account of it on a very kind podcast out there. I'm a very kind interviewer, an amazing podcast called Yowie Central with Sarah Bignell, and I'll put links to that in the description area below. But I've described my encounters and the main encounter, and that took place in North Carolina. But anyway, my point is that I've had experiences with that energy of a Sasquatch, and this did feel slightly different. So I did talk to somebody who does great readings and is a really good seer, sees deeper. I don't like the term psychic, but for those of you that get what that is, it's, kind of an umbrella term that a lot of people can click or, resonate with. But anyway, or an intuitive. But anyway, she was saying what she was getting off of it, kind of like seeing the scene in her mind, was that it was kind of an ET, related happening. Now, I don't know why it would have been like partitioned off in that way, but definitely interesting. So if you've ever experienced that, I'm just sharing my experience because this is the only way we learn about these things. Perhaps you've had some kind of weird mystical experience. You can't quite put your finger on it, and could be of the supernatural, what's called supernatural. In essence, though, any of these beings that we talk about, like with Sasquatch or even ET presence, it's just really kind of interdimensional. They're in a different frequency or can jump in and out of frequencies very easily, and it's just outside of our current visible sight range. That's it. Much like if somebody passes. I've had to, what is it? I'm trying to look for the word. I've been at bedside of people who pass, and I help, I don't like the term cross them over, but help them with the transition process. And once you've seen somebody actively pass in that way, it can be, I know this is going to sound strange, but it can be very beautiful when you see the soul is ready or preparing, to move into a different frequency. And it really is just like stepping across the sidewalk and you're there, quote unquote. So you're just changing frequency. Anyway, that's why people, with ghost phenomenon, or you feel like somebody's still there, that's because they are right there, just outside of our physical sight range. All right, hopped over there, so I might as well keep hopping there. So back on the still continuing the Sasquatch topic. I just want to put this to everyone's attention. If you're not aware of this channel, it's Sasquatch Ontario with Mike Patterson, and there's a video on there, and it says Sasquatch Sings. And I'll put, again, the links below, in the description area after I'm done. But that one is a really great video because this guy Mike has been interacting with a Sasquatch family for over 12 years, I think now. And, for me, it's absolutely legitimate. He has recordings of Sasquatch speaking, singing, and a lot of other things. So I highly recommend you go check it out. To me, that totally rings true. And I just feel it when you hear the voice and the singing. I think, you too will be able to resonate with that and just feel it, that the authenticity of it. But anyway, in one of the scenes, you just see the outline of the Sasquatch sitting in the woods. And here I just zoomed in a little more and lightened it up. So you see the nose and the eyes and the cone-shaped head, Anyway, he's got a lot of great information. If you're just stepping into that world or coming into, do they exist? Don't they exist? That's a nice channel to start and look around in. And if you already know about Sasquatch, it's also a nice site to go listen to some of the audio recordings and other visuals presented there. Okay, now I'm just going to hold this up with the blue whale. These are just kind of excerpts off the internet to show different aspects. I mean, the length of this thing is incredible. I was pulling down some really giant bamboo in my area. And I was pulling these stalks down that had died, and they were over 30 feet long. And I laid them on the ground, and I thought, oh my gosh, that the longest thing that I pulled down is not even a third of the length of this blue whale. So if you haven't really thought of it, I invite you to go ahead and, think of what's physically around you that's 110 feet long. And then imagine standing next to it, and then that's the length of this blue whale. Now, if you're fortunate enough to have been out in the world and have seen one firsthand, that must have been amazing. I'm trying to think if I've seen a whale in the wild. No, I don't think I have. But that is definitely on my list to experience any kind of whale in the wild. Actually, I did. A pilot whale I experienced, I got to say. I held one in my arms for 4 hours trying to save it. I talked about that on a previous show. But to me, that's still kind of like a dolphin, because technically a pilot whale is a dolphin. But aside from that, I haven't seen one just out in the open ocean. It must be truly amazing. So anyway, I just wanted to bring up some of these images and also talk about the whale in a more mystical sense. So we know the statistics. I put on my posts section of my channel a little short video of there's a museum somewhere where they have a scale model of the actual size of the heart of a whale. I just thought that was an interesting fact. Maybe people don't talk about much. And the heart is so big that a human, like grown human, can fit through the artery, the tube easily. So that's how massive these hearts are. Anyway, I wanted to talk more about a little bit on the mystical side. The blue whale, they say like it's like the master of the seas, really. Nothing too much, can intimidate it. And it just, when you look in the eyes, at least what I've seen on some videos of some people have captured them, either swimming with them and with drones, you feel the wisdom, you feel there's more to a whale than just, we talk about a mammal in the ocean, there really is something, much more than that, you just see the soul in the eyes. And the thing is that they are often referred to in certain communities, spiritual communities, as like being the wisdom keepers and also like the grid guardians. So if you've ever heard of like crystals or crystal gridding, or like I've talked about it before. Oh, thank you, Rita, 100%. Thank you. And I'm so glad you guys can hear me, because sometimes you don't know if like the audio is working or whatever else. But with the whales, it's when we get into kind of the esoteric was the word I was looking for. Some people understand it better, like mystical. We talk about crystals, and we talk about quartz being an amplifier. So, I can't get it. It's outside of my reach right now. But clear quartz, I think most people know what that is. If you think of just like a basic crystal, and the clear quartz, we talk about quartz movement and clocks and watches, especially back in the day in the 80s, everything was quartz movement. That's because there's an actual piece of quartz inside of the watch or the clock. And I invite you to do that fun work and take a look at how does quartz work within a clock for time regulation. And it regulates the frequencies. And it's amazing how it works. And we're talking just a little chip. You can get into very fancy watches, very expensive ones. They might have a ruby or some other type of crystal in there. It is actually doing something. It does help, perpetuate and modulate the frequency. But anyway, the reason why I'm talking about that is it is said too that if you looked at us, each one of us, if you've had the honor or privilege, I guess, if you've had any children and or you're an aunt or some relative and you've looked at a sonogram as the baby is forming inside the mom, it starts off as cells, as we know, and starts growing. But the moment, to me, that life becomes a life is on the actual, instrumentation. You see a flash of light as the heartbeat, it flashes. And that's how you know that the whole thing now has come to life. The God spark, or the spark of life, has come in. Well, you can look at that spark. It's white. It flashes bright white. So to me, that is the crystal within each of us. We are that amplifier, that transmitter of love from the heart space. And so anyway, that's, kind of where it sits. So what I'm saying is, just like each of us, we may be called lately to be suddenly moving somewhere, and it's maybe a little baffling because you're like, I didn't plan on moving over here, or suddenly called to go visit a place, even if it's not that far from where you are. Just know that we humans are grid workers in the sense, if you're of a loving heart and want to see the world, even better than it is now, we want to move into a more beautiful world. You are that little spark being called on this huge energetic grid of this earth. You're moving there with purpose, and you bring that energy, and it is doing something. Well, this was a very long-winded way to come back around to it. Well, so does the whale. Okay, because the whale and the human heart, I think, are very equatable, not in size, but there's something about it. It's very resonant. And so think about it. The massive, extensive territory of the oceans. They're always telling us we only know 5 or 10% of what the oceans really are. They move across. And so those are heart resonators. And so they also, too, are kind of maintaining the grid of the oceans. And so I put in my post section a little article about how there's the blue whale is suddenly popping up off the coast of New England. And it's unprecedented for them to see them off of that coast. And they're like, oh, they're hypothesizing, oh, they must be going there for food or must be going there for whatever. But no, I think the real reason is they're also going because there are different areas of the planet that do need this kind of energizing, heart, love generating energy frequency that will mend or amplify the grids. So I think they are, they've got the little quartz crystal within them too. And they're definitely regulating frequencies of the oceans. So that's just my little thoughts on that. Anyway, I don't know if any of you have any affinity toward the blue whale versus the, like the orca or other kinds of whales. I do often bring in a crystal of the day. I'm going to sprinkle a few through the show. I held these up before on my other live involving whale and wolf, but I'm going to show it again. Like if you're ever into looking for a new kind of crystal, this is Orca agate, and this is a palm stone, and they're all very unique, and they come from Madagascar. They have a very nice energy to them. And just in case anybody didn't see them last time, this is one of my favorites because it actually looks like an orca coming up out of the water. So they come in different shapes, free form. I think this one's called flame, kind of free form because it's got like these little like grooves around it. Wait, sorry. Trying to get the right angle where you can kind of see it. Yeah, it's kind of like swept down. Let me just see there. If you can see it, I don't know if you see what I mean. I'm lacking the words today. But anyway, they all come in all shape and sizes. And some are more pale, like this one's a little more gray versus true black. So they're very interesting. Each one's very different. And, sometimes we're not fortunate enough to go to like a gem show, mineralogy or lapidary or gem show in your area, although those are great to do. But I've had really great luck online. So it works too. If you just look online and go, I don't know, I feel like I like that one. Usually when they arrive, they're good. Just really double check the sizes though, because some of the pictures might look larger and you don't want to be disappointed. So really look at the details and then break out your tape measure, ruler, whatever it is you need to, and make sure it's the right size so that you're not disappointed when they reach you. Okay, now we're going to look at the dwarf willow. And the dwarf willow, the dwarf willow and the Carabara atoma ant on the same slide. Okay, I'm not really going to say much about the ant, not to be like disrespectful, but as I was putting the show together, I just I walk around. I'm like, well, what should I talk about? What do people need to hear? What's a good thing to bring up or not? And nothing was really coming about the ant. And I think that's because that's probably going to be another topic down the road. I mean, if any of you have heard about the Hopi prophecy, there's the whole thing about the ant people and what, they represent. So it might want to move into that kind of whole topic on its own. So for right now, I just want to like bookmark it and say, well, that's supposedly the smallest one. I think that's a true representation. Someone took a picture. If you go online, there's surprisingly little, pun intended, about that ant. Like I think I've only seen that photo. So if you can find other photos, congrats, because it was just hard for me to find any other photo. But just know it's a very, very tiny ant. Now, the dwarf willow, this is just a scene in the Arctic. I mean, it really just looks like a little flowering plant. So again, that's going to be fun work for all of you, whoever has interest, to go look up a little more about the dwarf willow, what constitutes the tiniest tree. Again, I just kind of glazed over that. I don't know why. And I think that's just because that's the springboard for any of you out there who are interested to look further. Okay. Now what came up though, in talking about willow and the blue whale, those two words came together for me on that China pattern. So blue willow, I don't know if any of you are familiar with it or have any pieces. They did reproductions of it back in I think ongoing. So if you don't have the vintage original, this is like an original one from the 1700s, I think. There's, much newer ones. What I wanted to bring up, though, is there's a scene, and it varies based on the vintage and, the older ones, modern ones. But they do have a willow tree prominent in the center. There's a pine tree. And then I brought this little thing up here because it talks about the different elements, on the China pattern. So you've got the willow, a bridge, doves, a pagoda or pavilion, a fence, and some sailboats. In some of the images, there's like two lovers on a bridge. And somebody brought up that, there's a lore and story behind that China pattern, that it's like a forbidden love kind of theme. Here, I'm going to just, put up a real one. So this is a reproduction. And anyway, you can kind of see it, some of the elements of it. But it also kind of reminded me, even though it says pine, this one reminds me kind of like of a redwood rising up above everything, and the willow down in here. But anyway, the story goes that it was like two lovers, and of course the girl was of high standing, and her father didn't want her dating his clerk, of lowly clerk, not making money type of thing. And so they kind of escaped and went over the bridge and went off, over in the water, and found some place to live. So supposedly that kind of forbidden love story, I don't like to think of that when I'm using it. So I just focus more on like, oh, how nice, the botanicals. So I did bring up a question or not a question, just food for thought in the post section of my channel. Like, what do you use for your everyday, ware that you eat off of? So is it like, china, porcelain, ceramic, wood, metal, plastic, and what color is it? What pattern is on it? Because this stuff matters on the daily, as you're looking down, even if it's subconscious. So it's just maybe, being mindful. Also, if you bought it new, or you bought it used, or bought it at the thrift store, especially if it's used by others, or you inherited it in your family line, just, you might want to do like an energy clearing on it all, because especially if it's inherited or you don't know where it came from, like from a thrift store, because those energies are carried, anytime anyone has touched or held or focused on something. So you just might want to do a little energy clearing of it yourself. It can be simple. Just go intuitively with however you think. It may just be while you wash it in the sink. Maybe just say, I'm grateful for this, and I wash away any other energies or attachments that I may not want on here, and just uplift the frequencies of it. Also be mindful of your, cups or whatever you use, the colors, just like there's color therapy on clothes. Like, you may feel happier if you put on a pink shirt, for example, versus a black one, whatever, vice versa. The point is that these things on the daily, in our everyday use, like they say, daily dishware or whatever, do have an impact in our lives, just as like the material of spoons, things that you stir with or put to our mouth. In the day, they used silver that had a certain frequency as it touched your mouth. Now there's a lot of like bamboo products, wood products, or, things that you eat with your hands are probably even the most harmonious with your body. But just little things to think of, maybe you've used a lot of plastics, and maybe it's time to explore some other options. Or like straws, I know that they're, instead of plastic, they're going with things like stainless steel even, or plant-based, whatever, paper. And again, all of that touching your mouth and your body and your whole system has an impact. So maybe just think about it. And even the color of the straw, right? All right, that just came to mind. All right, now with the willow, I'm going to bring up, maybe at the very end, if there's time, I am going to bring up some like oracle deck and cards, but I know that's not for everybody, so I'll bring it at the end. But I am going to bring some up right now, because as we are still kind of in the willow topic, I'm going to go into a little different avenue with it. I did want to bring this up because this is a really nice oracle card deck plus book by a woman from Ireland who works with landscaping. So she's very in touch with the trees and the roots. It's called, what I'm going to read from is called Roots, Insights from the Tree Alphabet of Old Ireland. And I knew she had reference to willow in here. And so I want to just read a quick excerpt. I am going to put it in the description area below if you're interested in this book. It has a lot of really nice old Gaelic, old Irish references. And so anyway, here is the willow, the card that she has for it, and it says attend. And I'll explain why, and that's the back. So, but before I get there, I'm just going to read a little bit out of here. So let's see. There's a little message here from the willow that says, pay attention to what's ahead. To what's around you. There's more going on than you think. And then I want to jump ahead. There's a lot of beautiful things that talk about the willow tree. Let's see. But I want to jump to one more thing at the end, because I took a placeholder card. I shuffled the deck, and another card popped out that I wanted to use as a bookmark, like a placeholder in the book to find willow. And that message was grow. And when I was reading about willow at the very end, there's a nice little reference to that too. But what I want to read is, it just says, sorry, I'm trying to find my right place here. Let me see. I had something. Oh, okay. Yeah. Give me one moment to catch up with this. I got to put the flashlight on here. It's dark down at my table. Hang on. Okay. I'm going to read this about Willow. So it says, in the quiet, in gazing at the stars and contemplation, you start seeing the things you've been missing. And spring, you'll notice the tiny willow flowers, which the bees have already found. You see the world around you for what it really is, not the blurred background your busy mind has made of it. You begin, if you sit still long enough, to notice things. And in paying attention, really paying attention, you may begin to learn. Listen. The willow is whispering. If you're quiet, you'll hear the words. Sit still, calm down. Now open your eyes. See what's really there. See it all. Now, keep your eyes open. Keep looking. Don't go back to sleep. So anyway, I just thought that was beautiful. And I'm sorry, my energy is a little bit all over the place. I don't know why today. So give me a moment. But that's a beautiful message from the willow. Beautiful deck, beautiful book. And also I wanted to bring up, because they talk about the bee and the reference of the little flowers, another crystal that's really beautiful is the Bumblebee Jasper, a very happy stone, very happy healing stone. And also, I got to bring it up again, because when I think of the redwood forest, I think of the Preseli Bluestone of Preseli Hills in Wales. That's the inner circle or inner arc of the of Stonehenge. For whatever reason, I really feel the energy of the Stonehenge, because we have the standing stones, and I guess I equate that too with the standing, majestic redwood trees. So anyway, that's a little aside. So let's get back to our willow, and instead of the China pattern now, we're going to talk about another topic. For some, it's like, oh no, this is a heavy topic, but it's a topic to look at so we can see what's going on in the world, acknowledge it, and then say, okay, no more, we're going to move in a different way. And what I'm going to be referring to is another YouTube video I put on my post section is about looking at some of the fires that have been happening in all over the world, but especially in California over the last, many years, but especially since like 2017, 18. And it's looking at what caused these fires, and it's looking from a forensic arborist point of view, and a very well-seasoned arborist. This guy, his name is Robert, and I'll put the references in the description area below. But anyway, he, hikes through the mountains, has, really thoroughly investigated everything, and from a arborist point of view, so somebody who knows trees. And what he talks about is that a lot of the fires, probably over 90% of the ones that he's been looking at, have been caused by non-natural means. And yes, I am talking directed energy weapons. Now, this is even on all of the sites, Lockheed Martin. I don't want to give all these agencies and entities like credit, but the point is that even on their own websites, they're showing you the laser housings and capability of these planes. And these planes can do laser damage from 40,000 feet and over 100 miles away. So there may be this kind of photon laser beam coming down, and you'll never quite know it because the thing generating it is from far away. But what you will know is its damage and its wake. And so when you look at Paradise, California and other fires, undeniably, even from, other points of view, but in this case, we will talk about the arborist point of view. These are not wildfires. These are not naturally caused. You see all these trees standing and very leafy, so that is not a natural fire. It is also not a natural fire because we have everything reduced to white ash, not even the toilets, nothing that normally would survive a regular natural wildfire would be there. You would see toilets, you would see granite countertops, you'd see a lot of stuff. This is just pulverized ash. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is that plastics survive it. So I don't have it in these images, but there will be, especially the color blue plastics, the plastics don't burn. So I'm going to defer to the video that I posted in my little, post section, and I'll put it in the description area below, because this is a really worthwhile little interview between Peggy Hall at the Healthy American and Robert, and I forget his last name, begins with B, Brame, something like that. And they really do a beautiful discussion on it and go into the full evidence. But the reason why I'm bringing it up too is because he specifically, Robert specifically talks about the willow tree. And, here's a willow tree, and he talks about them being water lovers. Even if you've never seen one in real life, you must know that they're always on the riverside. Actually, the willow tree is referenced heavily in The Hobbit. And I think, in The Hobbit, for any Lord of the Ring fans too. And the thing is that he calls them extreme water lovers because they're just like us, they soak up the water. That's what they live for. That's why they're so close to all of the riverbeds. This is not a willow tree, but he shows evidence in the interview that I'm going to post below of another water lover. I think this is a cottonwood that they just soak up the water. And so this black area was because of the laser weaponry. Works with microwaves somehow. I'm not going to pretend to tell you the whole dynamics of it. That's something to look up on your own of how they actually function. But the point is it just microwaves the heck out of whatever it's touching. So all of the water, which normally would protect the tree, they're the last to burn. It turns it into a weapon from within and just, burns the tree from within because the microwave is electrocuting the water. Activating, microwave-wise the water. So anyway, I highly recommend that video. And, there's plenty other evidences of what's not kind of burning naturally. This would apply to the LA fires, Lahaina. I believe Napa Valley as well, because I've been really watching how all of these fires were caused back in the day, real time as they were happening. And you really get good intel. The moment there's some type of thing like that, get on the internet fast, especially like YouTube. And you will see people with honest reporting of what's going on. And then very fast, it gets, wiped off the internet. So if you kind of want to really know what's going on, you got to get on quick before it gets scrubbed. Thank you. Rita says it was a great video. So enlightening thank you, Rita. I'm so glad you got to see that video. So anyway, I will put that in there, like I said. And I'm going to go through, I think now, a few cards for anybody who's interested in that. If not, you can, feel free to hop off. I also want to mention too, if I didn't mention at the beginning, this is the 6th year. I had my 6th year anniversary for the starting of this channel. So I did this, started it on March 8th, 2020. So it has officially been 6 years. And as I mentioned in my post section, I didn't feel like doing a show. I was going to do like, hey, it's a surprise live. We're celebrating the channel. I wasn't feeling it. So I did just put another video of some beautiful kind of cow calling singing of this woman in Sweden, because it was just a very soul moving song. And I thought, you know what, that's how I want to honor this channel. So if you want to see that, go check it out over there. So anyway, let me go ahead and pull up some cards for anybody who's interested in Oracle deck type things, because there's some nice meanings behind whale and ant spirits, and that's what I'm going to kind of show today. So I did show this card, number 65 or 11 or 2, whale spirit, trust the great mystery. I showed that on my last, not my last, but a previous live, the whale and wolf one. So I pull these out deliberately. Normally, you do the shuffle deck and they pop out. That's different for card reading, which I can do, but in this case, I wanted to bring them out deliberately. And I might read a little bit about them again. And this one I pulled out Ant Spirit, and it says time to collaborate, number 1. And that's a very beautiful card too. And this is coming from the Spirit Animal Oracle, Colette by Colette Baron Reed. And I will put that in the description area below as well. Now I have companion cards for whale and ant spirit. And let me start with whale. So like I said, I sometimes, jump out some cards just to be like with bookmarks so I can, read you a little bit from it. So the companion one for whale that hopped out was Moth Spirit, Surrender Now. And that's also a number 12. Let's see, is that number 12? Yeah, 12 or a 3 in numerology. So that's a pretty card too. And again, I'm just pulling these extras, little bonus messages in case anybody just needs to hear a word or see an image, or the number might mean something to you. Okay. So for whale spirit together, it says, trust the great mystery, we've got with the whale, trust the great mystery. And it really actually works well with surrender now, because what is it when we do with trust? I mean, this whale even looks like in free fall. They just, they don't care which way is up really, they just float around. Doesn't matter which way they're going or if they're going anywhere. And so surrendering has that component to it. And I think, let me see, I don't know if I want to read anything from this. No, I'm going to move on to the ant. Now the ant has Companion card 2 that I used as a bookmark, and what hopped out was Horse Spirit, Freedom is Yours. It's a number 33 or 6. And that's a beautiful card too. So freedom is yours. I'm sure a lot of you have heard it all over. We're in the year of the fire horse now. That started supposedly February 17th. Again, be loose about the dates, but we came from what was it, the wooden snake, and the shedding energy of getting rid of the old and welcoming in the new. And now it's not just welcoming the new, it's like taking and running with it, right? So freedom is yours. Remember that. You're as free as you want to be. It's an inside job. And if you say, oh, I can't do that, or they're not letting me, what the heck are you doing? Why are you thinking that way? You are this magnificent being. You've got the God spark, the spark of life within you. There are no limitations other than if your belief in them. It's like the image coming to me now is the elephant, and the story of the elephant, and somebody just, put a very low rope encircling a little area to contain this elephant. And the rope was maybe not even a foot off the ground. And the elephant supposedly felt encaged, like it couldn't step over the rope. But again, if you think about it, yeah, the elephant is massive, just takes one step, can go right over it. So we're our own worst enemies sometimes, creating limitations that aren't even there. And so if you feel like, oh, well, I can't, then ask yourself, why do you feel you can't? Of course you can. And there's probably not just one way you can, there are millions of ways you can. And if you're not sure, you can always, as you go to bed and your head's about to hit the pillow, if you don't feel like you have the strength to bring it up, or you feel you lack the creativity for whatever reason, then as you go to sleep, you can always just say, my divine team, whoever that is, God, Jesus, Buddha, Allah, angels, your galactic family, ancestors, whoever you pray to, all of them, all of the above is fine too. And just say, kindly show me, what's a great way to move through this if you're having a challenge, because there's going to be tons of ways to do it. And that's especially if you're not ready to just take a leap of faith, because that takes another level. You've got to be kind of ready for that, right? So anyway, sorry I'm wandering all over there, but I think somebody needs to hear that. There is no limitation. And the more emboldened you are, usually, like if you just say, oh, this isn't right and it's got to change, usually the divine backup will work through you and help you, push through whatever this seeming obstacle is, because in reality it doesn't exist. It's just in your mind. And the more you align your conviction with divine power that's limitless, you can do anything, and everything moves out of your way. It's a beautiful energy to practice and work with. All right, well, Ant Spirit, I will read something, and I've got to put the flashlight on because it's dark over here once again out of the book here. Yeah, I'll go ahead and read this. It says, with Ant Spirit, it's time to collaborate. So when Ant Spirit comes to visit, it's to celebrate the benefits of working in a partnership with others as part of a community or tribe. Spirit reminds you that to build your dream, you need to work with others, accept help, and trust in your most important partnership, the one you have with Spirit. Your intentions will come to fruition if you remain awake and focused on co-creating your reality. Page turning on. With others and with Spirit. Remember that the world around you can easily seduce you if you don't have some sort of practice or discipline like meditation to keep you on track as you build a life you desire. I'm going to interrupt here for a minute because I don't quite agree with that. Yes, okay, daily practice is good. Staying grounded is good. Practice, yes, they're talking about meditation, but remember, meditation can be earthing, just walking through a garden. It can be washing dishes. It can be anything where you just kind of let your mind, wander and not obsess or worry about anything. Let's see. So, I'm not going to read further because actually I'm not going to resonate with that part. But the point is, it's true. Like, we can look around and some of you might say, well, this message, yeah, well, I want to collaborate, but there's nobody there. And, so how am I supposed to collaborate if people aren't coming into my sphere? That's very valid. So you can put an intention out if you'd like to work with others, or some of us, it is kind of like a soul job until something else presents, and that's okay too. But the ant, though, is a good reminder that there are others around. Maybe it's time to take a chance. Again, maybe we were burned in the past and we tried to collaborate with people or do like a group project and it just went south. I think now the energies have shifted and we're kind of moving into a new way where the same things that used to happen in our world that were maybe less than, like more negative, like, oh, I worked in the group and it really sucked. Now that's flipping to, hey, you can work with a group and it will be really good. There's something about the global energies, the cosmological energies are changing to support those of a loving heart, those who want to do well and see good in the world, to now come together and work together in a harmonious way without it getting a little weird. That's at least my impression anyway. Okay, then this is from another deck. I'm not going to read anything, but just to show the different decks, we have Whale. This is coming from Kim Krantz and Animal Spirit Guidebook. And then this is the one for Ant. In this particular deck, they use Fire Ants. Now, if any of you have encountered a fire ants, that is no laughing matter. Those things, oh my God, they, come all up at once and really burn. They're very prominent in Florida. You got to kind of watch out. But they do work together. I guess they do embody the spirit of collaboration. And also, of course, we know about the strength of just even the basic ant that they can carry. I forget how many times their own weight. And it's just like, look at that example. If we think we can't do anything, this tiny little thing, can carry the equivalent of the weight of the world and just goes through like a champ. So again, I think a lot of it is a state of mind and state of connection, with the divine flow, and just knowing there's nothing we can't do or achieve. And even if we can't see it with our physical eyes directly, just that faith and trust that eventually, don't put a clock on it, that one way or the other, we will see stuff through that we want, or something will come in an equal or better way than we could ever possibly imagine. I'm also going to read, no, I'm not going to read from this. I'm just going to hold it up. But we have Sacred Forest Oracle, since we talked about the redwoods. And we have Willow Spirit. Let me see. Sorry about this, but I didn't realize how dark it gets on my little set here. Okay. Willow Spirit Flexibility looks like a 48, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a 12 or 3. And this is a really pretty card. So we have like a Fae spirit flying over the water with the willow. So flexibility is that message. And then also Wise Woman of the Grove, Grace. And it's a number 49. So it's what, 13 or 4, if my math is correct. If not, correct me. And that's a card with the, this one I wanted to pull because of the redwoods and the fern. And we've got the Wise Woman of the Grove. And there is, that does work. Some people may have encountered forest spirits. It's not always Sasquatch or Bigfoot. You might encounter some more like Native American type spirits or ancient wisdom keepers of the wood. So if you hear something more than a whisper of a willow or a tree, and something that sounds very human, that's who you might be working with. That somebody from ancient like ancestors and wisdom. I think they even call them the tree people. You might encounter, and they're more like real people. You might have a vision like of a real person standing there. You're not going crazy. These are things that we're coming into in our new world here. I say new world is it's our same world, but we're seeing it with new eyes, and we're bringing a higher loving frequency and consciously now. If you are here on watching me, especially this long, I think you get what I mean, right? Okay, I think that's it for now. I'm going to pop up one more crystal because I had it over to show with the Orca Agate, and this is Caribbean Calcite, if you're not familiar with it. These can be all different looks, and like this is just mostly a beautiful, it's kind of hard to tell with this lighting. Let me see if I put it over here. You can see it any better? No. Sorry, my backdrop, everything's mirrored. Let me come back over here. There. I think that's the best I can get. It's a really beautiful, like baby powder blue, kind of turquoise blue, and it's got these white swirls through. So it kind of reminds me of ocean foam, in the water there. Some of them have a little more sandy look, so I don't have much on this one. But I've seen some that are really beautiful, like the whole bottom looks like sand. And then there's like a white line that looks like foam, and then blue for the sea. Oh, thanks, Rita, for all your beautiful comments. And I see always beautiful. Yeah. So the Caribbean Calcite, there's some really beautiful, beautiful specimens. This one's kind of like, I like it because it's a palm stone and it was large, but I really would have liked the one with the sand at the bottom and it looked like the ocean on the top. So again, that's just for fun if you want to go look around and see what's available. And especially if you have a local show, it's always nice to support actual, people locally, but also obviously the online markets count too. So I think I was going to touch on a few other things, but I think that's it. So unless anybody had anything to chime in with, Like I say, I never know where these shows are going to go. I have a rough idea, but this one, I don't know. Hopefully it at least clicked with some of you or you got something out of it. But otherwise, I just want to wish all of you well, as always. I send you tremendous peace and love, and I send you best wishes for whatever you need right here and right now. Do know we are going through some pretty wild and crazy times. Try not to take it too much to heart or too seriously. Just bringing it up because I've noticed a wave of crazy energy out there. The other day I was driving, and this hasn't happened to me in forever. Just kind of going with the flow. I may say stuff once in a while. People do something stupid in front of me driving wise, but then I just laugh it off. But this guy was working up a rage behind me, and he was so mad, and he could just see it. He was like, on my tail. And I could just, looked in the side mirror, and you can just almost see like the cartoons where somebody gets mad and then they start turning red, and then steam comes out of the ears. This guy was like building this up, and I was in a very peaceful state. So anyway, just you never know what people are, going through. It doesn't mean you be a doormat or anything. Stand in your truth and be you and set out boundaries. But just know that, like when I looked at him, I wished him well after he went by, but I'm like, wow, what must that person, what state are they in to be doing that? And then, I went about my way. But it's just that it's very easy to get caught up in the world, obviously. And that was just a really good example to like, gosh, there's nothing worth it on this world to get that upset over. Nothing. And, as we know, we just kind of let it go and surrender it. So like some of those cards we're talking about. So anyway, I'm sure none of you are in that state like this guy was, but yeah, we might get like pressure cooked and popping off a bit about certain things that like, why isn't this happening yet? Or, what's going on? And that's normal. And then just let it go, right? There really is nothing. I mean, this is just a game. These are just a collection of experiences while we're here. So go whale watching if you can, get to a redwood forest and see those trees if you never have, have it on your mind as a wish, to go do whatever you never have been able to do yet. Like I told in previous shows that I got to go to a place that was on my list to go to for over 14 years. And I thought, oh my gosh, am I ever going to get to go? And my heart, I wish to go. And then finally it did open up to go. And I often do mental journeys back there. I'm just so grateful I got to go there because it was truly wondrous. And so, sometimes we think, well, some of us might be in a thing where I'm not motivated. I really don't know what I'm doing here. I don't even have a wish to go anywhere. That's okay. If you find yourself in that, be extra loving and gentle with yourself. I have many moments like that myself. And then that's when I'll go back and dip into a really beautiful memory or a moment where you saw this like crystal blue water you can't even describe, or, it can be anything. And then maybe try to think of something that you might, aspire to, like, somewhere you've never been or experience this or that, because I have a feeling that the days, and this is nothing gloom and doom, that our days of experiencing the true magnificence of this earth from a perspective of having our human body the way it is, like I can pick up a handful of sand and feel the texture, or, touch the top of the surface of the water. I mean, these kinds of things are very much about in the 3D human body right now, physicality. I have a feeling that we should, there's no should, woulds, or coulds, but that we should be experiencing whatever we can while we can now, because I think our body is starting to shift into a light body. If you look at people talking about ascension symptoms, and there's great channels like Higher Vibrations, I'll put her in the link below too, we're noticing our bodies are kind of changing. Now, some people are saying it's moving from a carbon base to more of a crystalline base as we move from like a 3D third dimension up into more 5D heavenly dimension. Is that true? I don't know. I do know that for the last over 10 years, almost 14 years, my body has been changing. It's been rejecting certain foods, only wanting certain things here and there. And it's very much to do with also planetary frequencies. There's a lot to this, but definitely something has been changing. And so anyway, again, I just have a feeling like we've been dropped off on the planet, like go have fun, go do what you want to do. And then that whatever dropped us off, like the big school bus is like, come and get us back at a certain point. So it's like, go explore and do whatever you want to do while we're here in this way together. That's all. I keep getting that feeling. So, and I'm saying it aloud for myself too, to remember if there's anything, it can be simple, like, oh, I don't know why I only go around the same 5 minutes within my neighborhood. Maybe it's like, hey, what if I go 20 minutes outside of my neighborhood? Just maybe think in a little bit more of an expansive way, and maybe try things that are a little bit out of the comfort zone. Again, this is time to play, and no rules other than no harm unto others, right? Nor unto yourself. Just putting out the love. So anyway, thanks again, Rita, for being here. And I'm just going to sign off for now. So tremendous peace and love to you all. Till next time, Lavender Sky Panther. Bye. Bye, everybody.